Welcome out to It's All Been Checked For. This time, the host. Yeah, we know you love your co-host on the show, Jimmy-Jerome, me, Stephen, and Keith. But this one is the host on It's All Been Checked For. Hey, become the host of your own party or a co-host of our party. Patreon.com/IBD. Get involved. Very, very, very affordable. I'm saying affordable. But you could also do it to the nth degree, speaking of an episode from a few weeks ago. Go to Patreon.com. Many tiers, many levels, many bonus things you'll get. You get to see us live. You get the radio hour, all kinds of stuff from them, bonus stuff from them, and more. I'll just say more. Patreon.com/IBD. That's where you get it. And I'm going to throw it back to our host as we talk about the host on It's All Been Trekked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Stephen.
And Keith, glad to be alive.
Jimmy-Jerome. Keith is deathly ill, poisoned by his wife on her way out of town. Thankfully, he got the antidote this afternoon. And Marianne will have to try another way to kill you.
It's what keeps their marriage so exciting. It's what keeps it alive.
I'm really looking forward to, in a few days, picking her up from the airport and saying, "Surprised to see me?" But
well, I think the two policemen you have with you will be the real surprise.
Oh, we joke, we kid, we like Marianne.
We do.
She would be much more subtle about killing Keith. It wouldn't be this obvious.
Yeah, she'll have a plan. It'll work.
So we're here to talk the host. First impressions.
Is this going to be an impregnation episode?
Mm-hmm.
But
I mean, sort of.
In a way, I liked where it ended up going, but there were some annoyances I had with certain reactions and the way they played out.
I had some more reservations, Keith. As soon as I saw that thing rolling around, the trill rolling around in his stomach, I was like, uh-oh. But no, now I'm going to sound like one of those Trek websites I cite on Wikipedia. I'm going to say, I think this is my favorite Crusher episode, but I'd have to go back and list them all. They're the ones that we actually called Crusher episodes. So that we've watched so far.
And there's not that many, but
yeah, because I know I've always been disappointed. But
I hadn't thought of it in that way. But I mean, it's she was a good aspect of it, or one of the saving graces, perhaps. But
until she wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This isn't something that I would have wanted to do for her if I were going to give her an episode.
Given the material she's had so far, I'm almost like, don't do another Crusher episode. And yet I love Beverly in the little bit she gets. And I know there are good episodes there gotta be, of her coming up. Because I like the actress. I like the character.
Yeah.
This episode makes me go, eh. And honestly, it's like we're near the end of the season. Are they running out of steam and running out of ideas? Do they need that summer refresher?
Yeah, I like a lot of Beverly in this episode, and then there are some things I don't like, and then there's some things that are worth talking about. I'm sure we will discuss at length.
I think the other thing that really drug this episode down for me is the Trill are such an established race after this episode.
And that's what I read.
And there's almost nothing in this episode that's consistent with the Trill after this episode. Yeah. So that really bothers me, but we'll get to that later in our review as we get to things. We start off with a Crusher log. We're getting all these new logs from different characters recently whenever we have a Crusher episode or a Geordi episode or a whoever episode. And she mentions that she got an actual letter from Wesley.
A letter.
Do you think that means she got a physical piece of paper, or do you think she's counting a computer message as an actual letter?
I think it's the latter. Letter.
There was some kind of intergalactic U.S. mail kind of Jeep, space Jeep, that they open the latch on the Enterprise, they shove all the mail in, and then they put it back up, and then they go about their way.
I doubt that very much.
Yeah, I bumped on that too. And then she said that he is struggling with ancient philosophies. And this goes back to a couple weeks ago where I was like, what is on the curriculum at the academy? Well, apparently ancient philosophies is still on.
I think it's a pretty wide curriculum.
Yeah. I think
it's definitely a liberal arts degree as well. It's not military training solely.
Yeah, that's true. I'm sure there's some Sun Tzu. Is that the Chinese military guy?
Could be. The Art of War.
Yeah. The Art of War. Yeah, I'm sure he's in there.
Yeah, I have to think that maybe what she meant by actual letter is he actually wrote something out rather than just like left her a voice message.
Yeah.
But still.
That makes sense.
And then Beverly reveals she has been dating Ambassador Odin, played by Frank Luz.
I'm guessing Frank Luz.
He's best known for When Harry Met Sally, Don Juan DeMarco, Ghost Town, and this role. He has 41 credits. This is his only Star Trek credit, and there are no Seinfeld credits.
And what a reveal it was.
I mean, yeah, they were all over each other.
Yeah. I will say I appreciate Horny Crusher. I will also say, and I'll emphasize this later, I'm not sure I love Mushy Crusher.
Yeah.
And I would rather Horny Crusher be directed at Picard, personally.
Right. Well, and again, of course, they weren't openly. Well, they were later. They were a little more open about it, but obviously, we're inside their quarters, and there's that open door policy. But for us, the viewer, it's like they're that couple that's like, I don't know if I want to be around them right now. Let's what bar are they going to? Okay, you know what? We ended up going to this other bar, so maybe we'll meet you guys later. Maybe we'll meet up with you guys later. So
the very PDA early lusty days.
Yes, yeah, very handsy. We're learning ambassadors get around. That's for sure.
Apparently. And so then Data interrupts them, which is actually a really fun scene, in my opinion.
True.
And they blow him off, but he says he's ill. I guess opening the door for Crusher to come check on him, and yet It's like, don't you have an excuse that covers you both? Why are you abandoning her?
Well, that is I think that was it. I think his quick thinking on both their parts.
Should Data be more attuned to people lying at this point?
No, I don't think so.
I guess
not for reasons like that. I don't think he would think of it as being something that someone would have a motive to lie about.
Yeah, I guess if he's not programmed for that, and I guess yeah, because the opposite thing would be there were social cues that he didn't pick up on, obviously. So I guess he's not that good at that either. It was very C-3PO.
Yes.
Barging in on Leia and Han, or anybody for that matter. But anyway.
So do you think that it was maybe a little bit too far out of character for him, for the way he's been written up to this point?
I think it's just me always expecting Data to be further along in his becoming a real boy thing.
Yeah.
In my mind. But I can't cite a specific instance where he did pick up social cues.
I will say there is a part in the first film where Data talks about, I feel like I should be further along, and I don't feel like I'm growing. I feel like I've hit a block, and I can't get past it. So it is something that's addressed plot-wise as this franchise continues.
I also feel that way about myself. I feel like I should be better at picking up social cues. And a lot of people probably agree.
Why does Data have to input the data manually into the computer? Couldn't he just plug in? Or where was he doing the calculations in the first place? Is his brain that much better than the ship's computer? It just felt really odd to me that he's going to have to sit for an hour and manually input data into the computer.
Yeah, was it sent to him maybe it came with the mail that letter came with, and it was in a manila envelope, and it was just handwritten.
Unless he's just saying with the completely wrong tone of voice that he has to input himself into the computer sexually. In which case that scene changes its meaning entirely. And good for him lasting a full hour.
Get to the meeting after their rendezvous. And it was tough to tell because they weren't really focusing on either Riker or Troy. But it felt like maybe Riker knew something. You could see glimpses of his face kind of giving them looks.
I think Troy knew something, and she probably told Riker when they were having pillow talk.
But they also, it's almost pointedly, had Deanna facing away from the camera. Beverly came in and lied. So you couldn't quite see the exact reaction until later.
Now it makes me think the thing I always ask, which is who can Beverly date? Because she's always well, you're my patient. So yeah, an ambassador comes on, well, he's not my patient. Then all of a sudden, he is her patient, and now... But that doesn't stop her in this episode.
I think because she's not his regular doctor. I think that's fine, in my opinion. I mean, honestly, I think a shipboard romance would be fine, too, as long as it doesn't start with, she's treating my leg. Let's,
Right. Well, we've talked about there's families, there's couples that live on board, obviously, and there's kids that get orphaned. Yeah. And everything. So, because when they kiss later, I'm jumping way ahead, when they kiss in the shuttle bay, I was like, should they be doing that? And I'm like, yeah, I guess, why not? As long as we're making out.
Yeah. I liked the sequence in the meeting where Troy overhears Data talking to Odin, and that's what gives them away.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess they haven't really been doing PDA. I guess they've been kind of keeping it down low, even though Troy, in the very next scene in the barber shop, was like, yeah, everybody knows. You're so obvious. It's like, no, you overheard Data and Odin. That's why.
Yeah.
No.
Put down, I think that she might have figured out from the headache thing. She might put it together that was the patient. And
the Crusher and Odin came in different doors to the meeting from different sides of the ship. Did you catch that?
Yeah.
No.
There's two doors into that conference room, and they came in just a little bit apart from opposite ends as if to make it less obvious.
And part of the reason Crusher's glowing is because Gates McFadden was 7 months pregnant by this point. So
still beautiful.
She had that glow.
Was she really?
Oh, yeah.
Huh.
So I didn't notice it during the episode. They were like, by this point we were having to find different ways to hide her behind chairs and all that kind of stuff.
Well, she's always making out. That does the trick.
Right.
In the spa, which was the barbershop, I assume, because we saw the bully and cutting hair. But what was the green liquid Crusher was dipping her hand into? And then she wouldn't just wipe it off on a towel. She waited, wrung it out and waited until it dried. That bothered me.
I thought it was Palmolive, which I know.
I was about to say the exact same thing.
Jimmy, you may not be familiar with Palmolive, but I thought it was Palmolive. I thought it was a nod to the old Palmolive commercial where they're like, oh, put your, what are you talking about? Palmolive, blah, blah, blah. You're soaking in it. This whole thing about how Palmolive was not rough on your hands, so when you were doing the dishes, your hands would be great. So it did look like Palmolive. It had the same color, consistency.
I never really thought about what the logic was behind having them soak in it. Like, is it supposed to? I guess the idea is it's supposed to be as good as a lotion or something you would use for the purpose? Or?
Yeah, it has restorative powers, I guess.
They talk about that we know very little about the Trill and their secret. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure in Star Trek Discovery, they established that they already know who the Trill are. So that, I guess, messes up the continuity.
They clearly have issues with the Trill. I mean, why not? And I guess we can get into this more later, Jimmy, because you know them better than I do, obviously. This is my first exposure. But why were they so steadfast and like, nope, we're going to call them the Trill even though they're not the same thing? Why not just come up with a different name?
So I don't know about that. I can tell you the Trill that we know going forward from this are secretive, especially when it comes to the symbiont. Okay. And they don't even tell their own people all the truth, let alone outsiders.
Okay.
So that part is consistent. The symbiont in the belly is consistent.
Okay.
Apparently what happened with why they changed the Trill, because this is really the only next-gen Trill thing. Mm-hmm. DS9 is a main character that's a Trill. And when it was played by Terry Farrell for the first 6 seasons.
Oh, yeah.
And when they did screen tests on her, I saw, as I was doing some research for this episode, a screen test where they put the prosthetics on her forehead like they did in this episode. And the producers or whatever, like, well, now she's not pretty anymore. What'd you do to her? She's this beautiful woman in our cast. We can't do this to her. They said, what about that makeup you did on Famke Janssen or whatever her name is in another episode of Next Gen? We haven't seen it yet, but it's coming up.
I'm looking forward.
And they're like, well, that makeup looked great, even though that was a different species entirely. So they wanted to keep the story they'd already built for Jadzia Dax, which makes sense because the story they built for is great. Yeah. But they decided they wanted the better makeup. But that's not the only thing that changed, because the relationship between the symbiont and the host, the way it's portrayed later, is very different because the host maintains their personality. They get all the memories of the symbiont. And so what becomes is like a shared personality that's a combination of the two of them when they switch bodies. It's not so much as a brain. Like this felt like, oh, the symbiont's in there, they take over. In the Trill later, it's more of a merging. So like Jadzia Dax is like the 9th host. And she remembers friends and relationships she had as previous hosts. But she doesn't, and she maintains her friendships that like she knows at least one of the other characters from a previous host and they're still friends. But she also has the Jadzia quality, which is different. And established in Deep Space Nine with her that it's a big no-no to keep a romantic relationship going when the symbiont moves to a new host. You're supposed to start over. So the fact that Odan was still trying to date Crusher after he switched hosts flies in the face of what we learn about Trill later.
Interesting.
But I don't want to get too deep into that because we got plenty of time to learn about Jadzia Dax and the Trill. And the Trill have been big on Discovery in season 3 as well. So
and that was my question when Riker's like, yeah, I'll do it. Like that whole time I'm like, is he experiencing all this or is he where's his brain? Or is he
It
not
felt
involved
like
at
he
all?
was just Odin. It didn't feel like he was Riker at all.
Yeah, and I think the way you describe it in the future makes more sense because otherwise, do they just have clone bodies sitting around? They get off a rack and like, send them out,
No.
put a Trill in them. So that wasn't clear to me in this incarnation of the Trill.
The Trill are the symbiote and the host. They're not just the symbiote.
That's what I was going to ask about. So the actual host species is referred to as Trill?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
At least in this case.
the way they differentiate them are joined Trill and unjoined Trill, but they're all Trill.
And Trill's a musical thing, isn't it? Or is it?
It is.
That where you roll your R's, or is
Yes.
that? Am I okay?
No, you're right.
All right.
So back to the barbershop beauty spa scene.
Yes.
Beverly really does not like Troy butting in on her relationship and making her talk about it. Like, I feel like she's trying to keep it a secret and just wants it to just be. Even when other people know, she doesn't want to talk about it.
Well, yeah, because you already alluded to. She's like, well, you're using your abilities. Like, no, everyone can tell. Yeah. But yeah,
even though we know that's a lie from the previous scene.
Yeah, and I guess it's that thing of, and it's tough if you're on a ship with 1,000 people and an open door policy to have something that's just yours. Yeah, I wrote down. Guess what? We're still not passing the Bechdel test here.
I wrote that too.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Like, I really wish we had more Troy and Crusher scenes when there wasn't a man involved for them to talk about. But they have multiple scenes in this episode just to talk about Odan. And it really annoys me.
They're good scenes. It's great to see those two together and just those two. But I wish they were talking about anything.
Yes.
Just once, other than a dude. So.
That's what I'm saying. Have these scenes in other episodes where they're not going after somebody. Or TrekkieFeminist.tumblr.com has next gen episodes broken down by Bechdel. This one, they do count as passing. Troy and Crusher talk about astringent.
Astringent, the eye mask.
And Agawa and Crusher, but that's still the same scene. Yeah. And Agawa and Crusher talk during surgery. And then Creel and Crusher at the end talk about love. Creel Odin, which I'm like, yeah, but that's really stretching it.
Yeah.
I have problems with what they're claiming as a pass here. I don't think this episode passes, in my opinion.
I don't think Mr. Bechdel would agree. No, I'm sure she's a woman. They came up with this, actually.
Yeah, I think the eye mask thing would fail because it doesn't necessarily move the plot forward. I think that's usually implied in what they have to be talking about.
Yeah.
I just want to go back. I think I'm going back to the first meeting with the planet they're dealing with. What I wrote down was these sound like things that are always going on Earth. The struggle is people fighting over an energy source. The source that they're using is dangerous to people's health, and felt like the rich planet had access to the energy source, and they didn't care that the poor planet was getting affected, which makes me think of like Love Island and a lot of things where it's like, we're gonna put this toxic waste in the bad neighborhood or that kind of thing. It's like, or not toxic, I shouldn't say toxic waste, but we're going to put this power plant or this nuclear power plant or this coal burning plant. Actually, again, I want to believe I think we're getting to a better place with all that, but there are still people that want to go back and hold on to their fossil fuels. So I thought that was a really good way of not being obvious about it, but it was just like, yep, this checks out. This is Earth.
Next note I have is the scene where Odin is fawning to Picard about Crusher, which was super uncomfortable for so many reasons. And he wasn't even trying to hide it. And Picard looked uncomfortable in that episode, in that scene. It's like, dude, I mean, clearly Beverly did not tell him about her and Picard's history because he would not be doing that unless he's just mean.
Yeah, and it still seems weird that like he's opening up to Picard. Why not talk to Riker? I guess if he doesn't know anyone on the ship, I guess you don't know who to.
Yeah, but he's been on the ship for 10 days because I assume because they've been dating for 10 days. You'd think he knows by now Picard's reserved, and that's not the person to go to. Unless he's just that excited and he's going to talk to whoever he runs into. You know what? Go to 10 Forward and get some drinks and talk to Guinan and whoever's tending bar about it.
There were just, I think that's one of several things that felt a little inconsistent to me, if not unwise. It's just the we're trying to keep it down low. We're trying to be secretive. We're trying to, whatever. Maybe it's just part of the game for him or them, perhaps. But just that kind of brimming. I guess he wasn't explicitly saying that he was involved with Beverly, but he was just gushing about her in a way that was almost unprofessional. Well, probably unprofessional. I don't know. I suppose that there's room for that, but it was more like, you have a great crew, especially her. she's really great.
Yeah.
And also a woman. You know, that kind of...
Yeah. He if he could have stopped a lot earlier, he would have been fine. But, you know, and obviously it was just for us to see the Picard reaction. Picard was a really good guy in this episode.
He was.
And we'll get to that scene later.
More, later. But, yeah. So Odin and Riker get in a shuttle, and to me, there doesn't seem to be any plot reason that Riker volunteers to go in this shuttle. Nope. It almost felt like maybe they were going to have to do the surgery in the shuttle and then change their mind and then just left it.
I thought that too. Why is Riker on this shuttle? Why? Well, it doesn't make sense.
And the enemy that shoots at them really does not try very hard to kill them. Like, they fire a couple times, and then they just sit there while the shuttle gets away. It feels like, I don't know, it's not a real attack. It feels very staged and forced.
Yeah, so we can get to that he can't beam up and all that. Yeah, I thought, is it wrong for me to think the Enterprise should have blown up that other ship? I mean,
not at all.
They shot on your shuttle. Yep. And you guys are like, well, they're going away. It's like, no, you guys can jack them up. I don't care what's going on. They fired on you. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt the firepower of the Enterprise is greater. Maim them, wound them enough that you can be like, okay, you guys are going into custody, or blow that thing out of the space.
I think blowing them up would not have been a proportional response. The Enterprise is about proportional response and using its power wisely. Yeah. But at least put it in a tractor beam until you can hold somebody responsible.
Exactly, yeah. So, and then my other thought was, why are there no weapons on the shuttle?
It's a peaceful shuttle.
Well, I think it was one of the small shuttles, wasn't it? It was one of those tiny ones.
But it feels
they were
like
just going from the ship to the surface.
There should be some kind of weapon on shuttles. They've got shields.
But other shuttles have weapons.
Yeah.
So Odin is injured somehow. Didn't make a lot of sense. But then he talks about, I am that parasite, which was a stupid line. And at this point, he's talking about the Trill and how they're joined, which, good, I want to hear about it, interesting. And he talks about how his father was him. But correct me if I'm wrong, he doesn't mention his father until this point. And then from this point on, he's like, yeah, it was my father that was negotiating them before. I would think earlier in this episode you established, like, oh, we remember your father, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, I couldn't remember.
So they could have used that for a reveal of some sort.
Yes.
Yeah.
Instead of putting it in after the fact.
Yeah. I couldn't remember.
The writing on this episode is not strong. I'm sorry, Michael Horvat, that wrote this episode. He only has 5 IMDb credits, and this is his only writing IMDb credits. He's director, cinematographer, editor, producer for a documentary called We Are Dad. He's got an assistant sound effects editor credit and a production staff credit. So this is his only writing. He does not have much of an IMDb page. And I think somebody need to go in and clean up the script for him. Either that, or somebody at Star Trek messed up his script. I don't know.
Yeah, and this brings me to my next question, which is when he tells Beverly about it or whatever. Well, you know, that's a lot to dump on her, but respect for his honesty or not. Should he? Is that something? At what point do you tell somebody, by the way, I am the parasite?
No, this is where I was done. And I guess retrospectively, as I'm going through the notes, this was just like, no, this character's behavior is unacceptable to me because he was being manipulative with it. It was more like, you don't tell people you're a single organism, so why? And so Jimmy mentioned earlier that they are secretive about their unions. That would have been helpful to know at some point, but I never really got the sense that they explained any of that. They just mentioned that he was sort of masquerading as his father for this other negotiation, meaning that it was secretive anyway. And he was constantly lying about needing to take the shuttle or why he needed to take it. And
that's another thing that's not consistent later. Trill used transporters all the time later.
So he throws it at Beverly like, in a sense of like, how dare you judge me for not, disclosing this immediately or bringing this up before we were in love and all this other crap. And so it's like, I don't know. It didn't seem like he had the moral high ground there. So
I would have compared it to Half a Life, where the guy was like, oh, we don't talk about that we die at 60 because, nobody thought about like he might not return because they don't have contact with outsiders. So they don't know how to bridge that culture. This guy's an ambassador that under another host has been out for decades among the stars. So he does know full well what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He again, the way that he was being evasive about it when he's talking to everyone earlier in the episode, he obviously knows they don't expect it.
Yeah.
And that could present an issue of some sort.
Yeah, his excuse was beyond flimsy. And then, but that's not the only bad part of this scene. So Riker volunteers to be the host because it's going to be a while before another Trill gets there. And Crusher says, well, there's no precedent for humans taking on the symbiote. And I want to know, how does she know that? She doesn't know anything about the symbiote. She doesn't know anything about the history. He's not filling her in. She doesn't know crap. She's talking out her butt.
You guys are making me like this episode a lot less than I did.
I didn't like this episode.
Oh, I got that.
Really? Because I thought, like Crusher, I thought I was hiding it so well.
You have not been.
Steven, I don't know why you're reading my mind about this. This isn't fair. You're not supposed to read my mind.
So coming up, I have the nail in the coffin for the episode.
Oh, God.
Oh,
so,
this might be my next one, too. But.
So Beverly orders her tea and doesn't specify a temperature.
Oh.
Yep, that's so unrealistic.
Probably knows her preferences.
I thought you were going to talk about the line she says where she says, I don't know who you are, which is like, is literal and figurative. It's just like, okay. And but that's a lot of relationships. And it's also Padme in Revenge of the Sith. I don't know who you are anymore. Yeah.
Did anybody else find it really clunky that Odin had to have a special nickname for her, Dr. Beverly, just so that when the symbiote changes hosts, they could show that?
They would know. Yeah.
Riker calling her Dr. Beverly, like, yeah.
Well, what do we think about, again, Riker volunteering for this? Does it make any more sense than him volunteering to
this one I get more because he's all about like being out there exploring and experiencing new things. Yeah. This one I totally bought.
That's true. So it makes me think of, and I've referenced this a lot in here, the Smallville episodes where some kryptonite affects things and changes relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think all we learned here was that Crusher is attracted to. Eventually, I think we really learned it, that she's attracted to Riker.
She says
all that
he's
jive,
like a brother to her,
right? Which I believe. But then she says all that flowery jive about, well, I know the real person or Trill or whatever inside you, and then 15 minutes later, she's like, no, this is too much, which I also get, and we'll talk about that too. But for her, I think it was like, you know what? I can make this work. I mean, I think it was like, yeah, it's going to be a twofer kind of thing. And they had sex, right?
Oh, definitely.
Because wasn't that right before the hairbrush?
Yeah. No, definitely. Beverly and Riker definitely banged. And Riker definitely remembers it after this.
How do you? What? No, I don't know. Well, let's go back a bit because did they ever really explain what was going to happen to Riker before he volunteered? Like, were they saying this is going to be a temporary transfer until we get somebody on the way?
Yes.
You're going to be completely gone. I mean,
they didn't say completely gone. They did say it was temporary.
They didn't show the part where Riker's in the waiting room going through all the paperwork that tells him exactly what's going to happen in the procedure.
Yes.
So I feel like in modern day Trek, they would explain something like that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
They would, here's what the procedure entails.
There's a lot of Trill procedure explanation in season 3 of Star Trek Discovery. Yes.
Yeah. We could use some of that here, a little more.
Yeah. The symbiote itself, the design was weird. It looks similar to the design later, but it also has a lot of neon paint that I think they drop in subsequent appearances.
They wanted to be like a crab and something else mushed together.
Okay.
But
what was with the neon paint? A crab that was like going to a laser tag play?
To me, I thought it should have had more, and I don't know if this makes sense or whatever, but just to make it a better effect, some kind of slime or ooze or something, rather than it just looked very dry and
So they are a little slimy.
So.
They are a little slimy in future appearances, but they are just brown and drab. They don't even have the neon paint. So
maybe he was neon because he was injured.
Maybe
that's how
their bruises look.
I like that theory.
Picard called Riker the ambassador several times. Like Picard was just rolling with it, which felt a little odd, but also professional. But still, I feel like Picard would have some thoughts about his first officer and confidant being a new person that were never explored or talked about.
I mean, when you mentioned that along with his earlier scene, it feels like he was maybe underwritten in this one. The writer's like, I'm going to do a Beverly episode. Let's throw in some Crusher to have this forced interaction, and let's do some other things, and then everyone else is just kind of there. It also explains the Riker thing too. It's just here are the main characters I have to work with. Let me position them here. Again, he had that slight look on his face in the first meeting, which they probably would have explored ordinarily, about picking up on their relationship, having an opinion about it, something like that. But he was just sort of like a blank slate this entire time.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of the daydream stuff?
Oh, that is my alternate episode, is Crusher's daydream about her classmate when she was 8 and he was 11, or vice versa, or whatever. Yeah, I loved how descriptive it was and how it was still there in her memory and how vivid it was. And yeah, I want to see that little romance or lack of romance or whatever.
That was her best part in this whole episode.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, because I loved it. I knew the surprise was coming, but I didn't know exactly what it was going to be. My mom calls me Stefan, so I perked up at that as well.
Yeah.
I think she's the only one, other than people who, occasionally I'll get called Stefan in a doctor's office or whatever, because of the spelling. But
well, yeah, you just dropped some expository information for something that's going to happen. This is foreshadowing some the clunky. She's going to be in a different body, and Stefan.
Oh. Yeah.
When they put download your mom into an Android body, that's how you'll know, but it's really her. So do we think Troy is super uncomfortable about this whole situation because Beverly's banging Riker and she wants to bang Riker?
I do.
I think Troy's normally okay with Riker sleeping with other people because she doesn't want to be exclusive, but when it's her best friend Beverly, I don't think it's...
I think that's why they put that scene in there. To be generous, I think that's something they wanted to address. It was almost like they had to have Deanna come and explicitly sign off on what was happening there and be like, I thought it through, go ahead.
See, that whole scene where Troy talks about her dad and everything, to me
oh my God. Oh.
To me was her trying too hard to appear she was okay with it without actually being okay with it.
Yeah. But why that of all things? Why the first man I loved was my father when we're talking about romantic relationships and just
so creepy.
Yeah. Completely the wrong connotation to.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm telling you, the writing on this episode sucked. I'm sorry, Michael Horvat.
Is that Troy hearing Crusher's first story about her first romance and Troy just thinking, oh, I was 8 once too? Or
I was 7. It was my father, but I was 7.
Yeah.
I did think when Riker and Crusher were bagging, a rose by any other name, that seemed appropriate.
Yeah. I mean, the more I think about it, I mean, the whole body switching is always going to be a problem.
Yeah.
But I feel like, for lack of a better term, couldn't Beverly have kept it in her pants for a little longer and not had sex with Riker while Riker was the host?
I mean, she could have.
Yeah. I mean, what?
But it's Riker.
Right. Which I goes back to my previous thought, which is like, she's like, yeah, let's give it, you know what? 2 birds, 1 stone, or whatever you want to call it. It's a twofer.
I'm going to be honest. If my wife's mind was put into Riker's body, I'd sleep with Riker.
Fair enough.
I wouldn't wait 2 days.
All right, but I mean, it just seemed like both the characters were putting an artificial timeline on what was going on there, and so haste, and so that's something else about that character which I really Odon, which I really did not like. The way he just was immediately pressuring her to interact and feel and be affectionate with him and taking it so personally, and I was like, come on.
That's a good point, especially knowing that he's only in Riker temporarily. Like, it would be more comfortable if she did sleep with her shipmate.
Yep.
Yeah.
Of course, he wanted her to quit Starfleet and go with him, so maybe that was part of his plan to get her to sleep with Riker, so she'd be more likely to leave the ship.
Well, and I guess Riker didn't know when he consented that he was consenting to sleeping with anyone that
right, that
Odon
too
wanted to sleep with.
That wouldn't have changed Riker's choice.
You're right.
Riker would have said, bonus, yes, please.
Still, just ethically, they could have at least thrown in a scene like that where he does. All right, well.
Yeah, actually, they wouldn't even be able to get the question out. Hey, by the way, as soon as you go inside, you're consenting to having sex. Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. As soon as he hears consent, Riker's aggressive consent. Once he hears consent, he's like, yep, nope, sign me up.
You just consented to having your limb lopped off. Oh, wait, what? Is it during sex? Possibly. Okay, I'm still okay with it.
Yeah. So Picard has that scene where he talks about to Crusher about whatever else, I'm your friend.
Mm-hmm.
The depth and complexity of emotion Patrick Stewart plays that scene with is terrific, because this is one of those scenes where you can tell once again he's in love with her, but he really is genuinely being a good friend, not just going through motions. Like, he cares about her on every level.
Yeah, and as much as he does like the broad Shakespearean stuff, which we know he's great at when he has to. Yeah, this is so just like doing so much with so little. And yeah, I got teary-eyed during that scene. It was just, that was the best scene of the episode for sure.
You know, that's another good example of why this bothered me. They were dating for a couple of weeks, less than
10
that.
days.
Yeah, so that reaction is understandable. He didn't really know her that well. What? If you really loved me, you would be like this. How can you be so, just what? It's 10 days.
So are we saying that Odin leaves a trail of women behind him that he does the same thing to over and over again?
I bet he does. It feels like he does. I mean, I feel like most women and most men, for that matter, if they were in a relationship like this, and in 10 days in, he's like, yeah, I want you to do all this stuff for me and change all your life for me or whatever.
Right.
I think that's a red flag. That's it's a red alert. It's a summer alert. I think the end of the episode kind of points out that she just had the hots for that guy, not for the Trill.
Yeah.
Yeah, the hots for both hosts. It was not for the Trill.
It's very physical for her.
Yeah, and that's okay. But I think that's what's going on. And there is the thing of, and I don't know if this is a real thing, but I think it is, when it's like, oh, we only have limited time together. So it's like, we're going to do as much as we can, which is kind of where he's coming from to an extent. But that he knows that, but she doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
I only have limited time to spy and all that stuff. But where it's like, okay, well, there's this urgency. So it drives up the hormones and the pheromones and everything else. But then at the end, she kind of like, I'm good.
So, yeah, let's get to the end. That's when Odin is now Creel Odin, played by Nicole Orth Palavinci, who's best known for the movie Silver and then this.
Yeah.
20 credits.
She doesn't have a lot.
Side found only track, not much, which is fine because she didn't impress me that much. But she shows up. Crusher's immediately like, and her heart drops. She's out. I was reading an article about this and Gates McFadden talking about this episode, and because the trans community hates this episode and the LGBT community hates this episode, and she's like, really, in my mind, she said, I get why they're upset about it. In my mind, she's like, I thought it was bad writing too, and I tried to tell them that, but you can only do what you can do, and because I had to do the lines and there was only so much time, she's like, in my mind, what I said was, well, she was already thrown off by the switch to Riker, and it took her too long to adapt. And now there's another switch, and it doesn't matter who it is. It can be the most attractive man or woman. It's just too much switching. That's not how it reads. That's not how it comes across.
Right.
Strangely, they didn't come out and say it, and I think it would have been, maybe this is a hot take or something, but I don't think it's unfair for her to be or heterosexual and have a reaction to that. Why not just say, I'm not into women? Does she have to be?
Exactly.
No, and if you do it that way, that's different too. It was the way it was done was just clumsy and offensive. And to say like, oh, I still like your personality or whatever, but yeah, I'm not physically attracted. But the whole way she did about, oh, well, my ability to love, maybe the human ability to love won't be so limited, feels very 1991 Earth of, we can't accept gay people, but hopefully in 10 years we can. And obviously we did in 10, 20 years. Yeah. But if she had still like kissed that woman and had a moment with her, the censors would have revolted. It would have been a huge, because Deep Space Nine in a few years ran into the same issue of trying to do that with another Trill kissing a same-sex partner when they had been heterosexual in a previous host. So I get they couldn't put like an actual romantic thing between them on television, but you can handle it better than this.
Yeah, my 1991 brain reaction would have been, come on, give it a try. Very Skinamaxy kind of thing. But my version now is just like, I agree. I think somebody at Mad Lab used to always throw out the question, if you woke up tomorrow morning and your girlfriend or wife had a penis, what would you do? And I was like,
sleep with her?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I could stop being in love with Colleen. And that's a very different thing from what happened here, though.
Yeah.
Again, it's 10 days and whatever. And then another part of me is like, well, just ride out this body. Maybe it won't last that long. I agree. There are other ways they could have handled the end. Like, you know what? I don't know if I can handle this changing thing. And Colleen and I talked about that too, which was, I was like, I don't know, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. I said, would you mind if I was somebody else every couple of years? I was like, that might be better for you. And she was like, I don't know. She's like, could you? And I was like, I thought about it because initially I was like, yeah, that'd be great. Because again, it's that to me, it's a very male centric thing, but it's kind of that thing. Yeah, man, a different girl every couple of years. That'd be great. But then when I was having a conversation where it was like, no, I'd rather have your face around. I'd rather have. I don't think that makes you. Because I think is there in truth no beauty aspect going on here of the last real. I mean, I think the last real prejudice is going to be, is it beauty, ugliness? The Medusans, they're ugly beauty. I mean, all his host bodies were good looking, even though the one was a woman, not a man. But if you're a heterosexual, it doesn't matter how pretty that person is. I mean, again, the heterosexuality, homosexuality, there's some fluidity there or whatever. But it sounds like Beverly is very 98%. She's not in the middle there. Hers isn't that fluid. She's which is fine. If you're that way, you're that way. Again, like you said, Keith.
But I was going to say that that's what's bothering me is that implication again that this is something that you can evolve out of. I mean, I think that should fly in the face of what sexuality is to begin with. I mean, sure, a lot of that is societal hangups that we learn when we're born. But then there's also, it shouldn't be like some sort of moral judgment about the person because they can't suddenly just drop their sexual preference or change it to suit someone's,
I think my biggest problem was how hard they were trying to be like, we're woke, 1991. It was. Do
you think that they thought they were being progressive about that? Or
yes, I do. And it came across very non-progressive granted from today's standards, but it felt offensive to me.
Yeah.
And you're right, Keith. It's not because she wouldn't give a try of a woman. It was just the specific way in which it was handled.
Yeah. And if you're talking about a race that, I mean, literally their gender is fluid, I think that is a very progressive thing. But the way the ball is dropped here, and they could have had her assistant.
Agua.
Agua come up and be like, hey, who's your friend? And then you have that moment. Then it's like, okay, you know what? We're cool with this. But you guys are right. That 1991, Ellen wasn't even a series till 7 years later. So if this was a HBO Dream On kind of scenario, then maybe you can get away with it, but not on syndicated television. But still, that doesn't excuse the mishandling of it. I mean, I think it's thought provoking because obviously we're talking about it, and that's one of the things I really liked about this episode. But
this is the segment that will probably get us some letters. But
send them to Keith at IABD Presents.
Actual letters. I want actual letters.
Especially in this time period and moving forward, the way they present romantic love bothers me. They deal with what I feel are unrealistic expectations about the way a person should feel about another person. It shouldn't be like, oh, I am so in love with this every aspect of this person that I know of here. And that means that I'm locked into this. And no matter what else they ever do, there's something wrong with me if I'm not eternally in love with them after making some sort of commitment like that. 10 days, 10 years, who knows what's going to happen? So when they're actually changing an entire body at that point, I don't think it's, not everyone's going to have the same reaction to that. Some people are going to be more tolerant or more excited about that than others. And I don't think that that should be presented as something that is especially shallow or unevolved. It's just, that's just the way it is.
I also think Colleen did one of her fat jokes when I said a different body every 5 years. She's like, you already have one. All right. Whatever. And I'm like, okay, but that's not really what I meant.
That's the bias we're not evolved to deal enough with, right? That, because there's been a lot of body positivity stuff.
Yeah. But
I mean, I'm fat and I hate my body, so.
I have hot takes about that too at some point, but.
That'll be a different episode.
Yeah, Colleen's put on some weight. And, I mean, and when I say put on some weight, not noticeable by most of us, but to her it is. And so it's like, I respect that. And I really respect your ability to turn anything I say into a fat A self-shaming fat
my
joke.
wife right now has grown quite a big noticeable belly. If you haven't seen, and it's kind of like 4.5 years ago when she gained like 45 pounds, like added extra 50% of her body weight, and then after 9 months, for some reason, it just kind of went away. I have a feeling that in a few more months, it might just go away again.
Well, it sounds like you need more couches in the house.
Oh, I thought she hosts a trill every once in a while for 9 months.
She does.
And then
Yeah, no, that's what it is. It's not a baby, it's a trill. It's a temporary trill.
Yeah, I had one fashion note. I thought the ambassadors for the two Alpha and Beta moons that fighting over the energy source, I thought their look was kind of Friday's Child, to go back to TOS. Yeah. The Julian Newmar. So I thought it was okay. I thought the way their faces looked, them and the original Trill host body, I like those. They weren't nothing to write home about, but they were cool.
Governor Leka Tryon, played by Barbara Turbach, best known for Walking Tall, Short Circuit, Curly Sue, and S. Darko, the sequel to Donnie Darko.
Yeah, she had quite the career.
Yeah, she did some American Horror Story more recently. Mm-hmm. She did die in 2016, so she's no longer with us. But she had about 100 credits. She will be in an episode of Star Trek Enterprise as a totally different character, of course. No Seinfeld, though. I really liked her purple outfit, and I did like the makeup. My only complaint was we saw multiple scenes with her hours, if not, I think days apart, and she was still wearing the same purple outfit. So they didn't have a budget for a second costume for her, apparently.
Well, they did do a lot of makeup, and I actually, when you reminded me of that, I was going to say I liked that too.
To do
really
one
like the
more
way that they had the...
to do one more Seinfeld reference, if you went back to her quarters, it's just 50 of those same outfits. It's the same one every day.
Like a cartoon character. It's her uniform.
I mean, it is possible that she has more than one, or it is like a uniform for her.
Yeah. It's true, but it just felt like lazy. Not lazy, because I'm sure it was budgetary, but budgetary, like, oh, well, that character's not important enough to get 2 costumes. The other, Kaylin Tross was the other one, played by William Newman, who's best known for Love of the Game, Mrs. Doubtfire. Got 67 credits. He also passed away in 2015, so he's no longer with us. And this is his only Trek credit, and he does not have a Seinfeld credit either, so no Seinfeld for this. But yeah, the fashion, I thought the Trill was fine. I liked the purple robe stuff. Alternate episodes. He at one point says Beverly thought she had ice in her veins, and then he found out she had fire. And all I could think of was George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire and what this episode would look like through Game of Thrones lens.
Yeah, I think at that point was when he said that line is when I wrote down that what I call crush it on was my annoyance of the episode. When they got into that mushy period there, that line was like, yep, don't need any more of this. Can I leave the quarters?
I'm going to second crush it on because I was torn between Beverly and Odan, especially because of that final scene. Yep. I'm gonna share them. Crush Odan for me as well. Keith, your annoyance?
Odan, just hands down, just all that.
The other thing that made Crush Odan even worse was the music they were playing with it. Like, we goofed on TOS when they played the which sometimes a relationship earned that to me. When the scenes where it didn't make sense in TOS is where it's like, wait a minute, these guys aren't in love yet. What the hell? But when it's good, it is. And in this instance, but this music just wasn't good and was so over the top. It's just like, oh, you're underlining how much I'm annoyed right now.
Yeah, I didn't catch it. No, but my annoyance was for Odan himself. Just because of the manipulative things he was doing. It was just really strange to pull.
Who do you want to have a drink with?
Because I am shallow, I'm going to go with the final host.
Fair enough. Kirill Odan?
Yeah, I know it's the same person on the inside, in theory, but I don't think she would be like, oh, you're the fire for me or whatever. I think she'd be very level-headed. But, you get a couple drinks in her, who knows? You get a couple drinks in me, we might both be sane. So, yeah.
I'm choosing Picard because I think he really needs somebody to go have a drink with.
That's very giving.
I'll be the good friend that listens to him.
I could probably choose Riker for similar reasons.
Riker?
Yeah, just...
Riker as Odan or just Riker?
No, just Riker to kind of debrief him on exactly what happened there. And
I thought you wanted to sleep with him while he was Odan.
No, just why did you decide to do this? Yeah. What do you remember? Do you regret it? That kind of thing.
That's nice. That's a good choice. Oh, I didn't mention this episode was directed by Marvin Rush, Marvin Rush is mostly known as a cinematographer for a variety of shows, including Next Gen, DS9, Voyager, Enterprise, The Orville, Hell on Wheels. I was excited about Hell on Wheels because, my man Anson Mount starred in that before he is now starring as Pike on the new Voyages. He only has 5 shows he's directed for. This was his first directing job. He also directed 2 episodes of Voyager, 2 episodes of Enterprise, 1 episode of Turn, Washington Spies on AMC, and 2 episodes of Hell on Wheels. So seems like he had a pretty good career to me. Ranking the episode. We're going to start near the bottom here. Let's start with the other Crusher episode because somebody said this was the best Crusher episode, and I'm going to disagree with you.
We'll see. I think you guys may have beat me down. We'll see.
Crusher got 2 episodes this season, as did Geordi, which we'll talk about next week. But earlier, the beginning of the season, she was in Remember Me, was a Crusher episode, where the ship started to disappear on her.
Yeah, I know I was like that less than you guys, and I know I like this one more than you guys. So I'm going to say above, but...
I'm going to go below. Keith?
Sorry, Keith, I forgot. We're supposed to
No, it's fine. I forgot that Remember Me was even in... That's funny. Forgot Remember Me was even in this season.
Every time we bring up Remember Me, we've forgotten it.
I mean, I would have sworn that was in season 3.
It was only the 5th episode of the season, so it's been a few months.
I kind of want to go above because of the concepts, but just the execution... I think it would help if I remembered Remember Me more.
So let me give you the surrounding episodes, see if that helps.
Yeah.
Above Remember Me is Night Terrors.
Which felt like the same thing in a way.
Which wasn't good, but wasn't terrible.
They can't get any sleep.
Right. Below Remember Me is Legacy with Tasha Yar's sister.
Okay, I would go below at this point, I think.
You're going to go below Remember Me?
Yeah, when she mentioned Legacy, I was thinking,
Does that mean you want to go below Legacy as well?
Almost. I mean,
I would.
Yeah, see, that's another one I like more than you guys.
Yeah.
I'm surprised it's that low now in retrospect. It's kind of funny.
I would rank it below that episode.
So Steven says go lower. I say go lower. Keith is below that's Final Mission, Wesley's final episode.
Wow.
Let's keep going.
I would rate it above that, but I know I'm the outlier, clearly.
We'll find out how high you go in a minute. Keith?
I could go below it, honestly. Just what's under that, though?
Clues. I would go below Clues, but I would stop there because below that is The Loss, and that's the one where Troy loses her empathic abilities. And I think this was better than that, but only barely.
Yeah, that feels about right.
Okay. So we'll put this 5th from the bottom. Sorry, Steven, you got left out of that, but I am curious how high you go. Would you go above Night Terrors?
Yeah.
Would you go above Future Imperfect?
We're getting close to the range. I think I'd still go above.
I don't think you go above Devil's Due.
No.
Okay.
I would not. No.
So you would have ranked it about 6 spots above where it is.
Yeah.
That's a big gap.
I'd like to just for all the stuff we talked about near the end, all that stuff. But you guys sold me on the writing being terrible because it.
So next week, The Mind's Eye. Geordi's brainwashed by the Romulans to assassinate a Klingon governor. Until then, live long.
In your body or maybe somebody else's, but get consent. And
consent's important.
Yeah. Maybe someday you'll be able to prosper. When you've come farther as a species.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?